So, without further ado, theater major Dan Torres.
Hello everyone. Thank you for all being here today. My name is Dan Torres, and the theme I got from the trip to Rwanda is Courage Conquers All. So a little bit about me. I am a fifth-year member of Buff State College. 1 year too long, but it's brought me great things, obviously. I am a theater major, as Drew said. I have a wonderful family and a really cool dog. So why Rwanda? What brought me there? Over the past 1.5 to 2 years, I've worked very closely with AFP, and through that, I've been able to hear all these incredible stories about the students who have went to Rwanda the past couple of years and what they learned there and how they became better human beings by doing that. And so last term, in the fall of 2014, I applied to go on the trip. I was accepted, but I was unable to go, unfortunately. So this year, when the opportunity came back, I gladly accepted and did anything I could to go, and I'm so happy I did. So upon telling people that I was going to Rwanda and that I was going to have this amazing experience do that, I was met with many reactions, but there was one in particular I was met with. So let's just take a minute to clarify something here. So here's where the outbreak was back in 2014. You could see that Ghana was the biggest factor in that we had Sierra Leone, certain parts of it, and we had Liberia. So I don't know who can see too well from here, but this is Ghana right up there. And Rwanda is way over here on the continent of Africa. Not a country, a continent of Africa, because people seem to get those confused all too often. So in doing more research, I found out that Ghana is about 4,500 miles away from Rwanda. So that's basically like saying you shouldn't go to New York because there's a disease in California that should be happening. As a matter of fact, because Ebola was in New York City, no one ever came up to me in Buffalo and said, "Are you worried about Ebola?" So back to why Rwanda. So everything that led up to this trip was very, very eye-opening. I'm on the acting track in my major, so I was hoping to get to tour a show abroad more than I have. I spent last semester touring our devised piece Mirror Mirror in the schools, and I was looking to build even more of an experience through that. So this is when we landed from our flight from Toronto to Ethiopia, and it was about a 12.5 to 12-hour flight around there. So we're all very exhausted, you could tell. And there's me talking to Lily, and it doesn't really show this too well in the picture, but I'm about 2 minutes away from having a nervous breakdown. We've had this really long flight. I'm sitting in the airport, so far away from home. I'm thinking, how many days are left? How many hours are left? When can I be home? Did I make the right decision? Is something going to happen out here? But little did I know that the factor of courage would play so well into this trip. And I never would have thought in a million years that I would have been met with what I was met with on this trip. So the first memorial that we went to was the Kigali Genocide Memorial Center in Kigali. And it's laid out like any museum you would find here in the United States. You could go anywhere and it's just like this. It had a great way of bringing you right into the genocide and showing what led up to it. And so it showed the history of Rwanda and how it came to be, colonial representation, the addition of the French and the Belgians, and everything that led right up to the genocide. And the genocide portion was very, very hard in particular to watch. This wasn't an image that was at the memorial, but I feel it speaks very, very well to how devastating this genocide was. There were bodies just all over the hills. People still haven't been identified from it because of how brutal it was. Like the previous presenters had said, there were attacks with machete, with clubs, with anything, because this was not a very high-tech or organized genocide. It just really, really, really was brutal. And the stained glass piece on the top corner too is one an artist did for the memorial. And if you can make it out, there are skulls right at the bottom of there, and it's a really, really accurate portrayal of what exactly the genocide brought. So after getting through the genocide portion of the memorial, you think, well, how can I go on? How can I keep going through this museum? Because it brought stories like this. When you left the genocide portion of the memorial, you were met with a room full of stories about people that had the courage to step up and say, I'm not going to let this happen, and save so many lives around them. This one in particular is my favorite story from it. The Interhamwe killer was chasing me down the alley. I was going to die any second. I banged on the front door of the yard. It opened almost immediately. He took me by the hand and stood in his doorway and told the killer to leave. He said that the Quran says, if you save one life, it is like saving the whole world. He did not know it was a Jewish text as well, and that is from the Talmud as well, that text in particular. And the man who saved this woman as well, I did some research on him fairly recently actually, and not only did he save her, he saved over 50 people in this genocide. And it got to the point where this wasn't the first interaction he had with authority or anything like that. And his whole stance on it was incredible to hear. He sold sugar from his house to help pay for anything that people would have needed in that. He only had room for women to sleep on beds. After a while, more and more people came to his house. He had an instance where someone came and asked his wife for identification. She said no, and he intervened. They came in, tried destroying his kitchen, and threw a grenade in the house. And the grenade didn't go off. So someone was watching over him pretty well during that. And just having the courage to say, no, no one is going to die today, is remarkable to me. So the Acero Memorial. This was another memorial we had been to during our trip, and it's on top of one of the hills in Rwanda, very, very steep, high hill, about, I'd say, 8,000 above sea level or so, 8,000 miles above. And during this tour, our guide wasn't the traditional guide for the museum. He was there, and the tour guide had gone to church. So we were waiting. He said, I can take you through. So we started going through the memorial, and as we went up the stairs, you could feel the lack of oxygen really, really depleting. And at one point, we were standing and talking to him, and he was describing some of the instances that had happened during the genocide at Acero in particular, where they didn't know whether an attack was going to happen from the bottom of the hill or the top, so they had to be prepared constantly. So they were constantly running up the hill, down the hill. And during the conversation, we had asked if he knew anybody that was at this memorial, and he said, oh yeah, I was here. So after he had said that, he rolled up his sleeve, and there was a gunshot wound right here from everything he had been through. Just to have the courage to keep educating people about that and keep walking up and down that hill, which must have so much history for him, is unbelievable to me. So the Tige Camp. The Tige Camp is a French acronym. It means a general work camp, and this is the prison that we visited while we were in Rwanda. So if I could get a few adjectives that could describe it, when you think of the prison system in America, what words come to mind? Anyone?
Horrible.
Segregated.
Punishment.
Bars.
Punitive. Numbers.
Well, this was the first image we were met with when we got to the Tige Camp. Well, Ashanti had been good enough to put, or Crystal had put this in her presentation as well. So the first image we were met with when we got to the Tige Camp was the prisoners dancing for us and inviting us to dance with them. Now these prisoners, during their time at this camp, before that they were at a maximum security prison, which is entirely unlike our maximum security prisons. They have a lever to open the door and no weapons at all. And these people have to go to the families that they wronged, whether they had killed somebody, whether they had stolen from them, or any other crimes like that. And they had to ask for forgiveness and confess what they had done to them. And the families always forgive. So now, after this, with this camp, they go around the country and rebuild the country that they destroyed. It's unbelievable to see that. And with our prison system in America, how do you think that could absolutely help us? Right now in federal prison, we have about 200,000 inmates that are just sitting in cells, probably contemplating the crimes they did and planning on doing it again when they get back, because they are not rehabilitated correctly. So instead of the punishment that we might have in this country, can we get prisoners to have the courage to help rebuild and help restart what they may have destroyed? So, the final form of courage that I found in Rwanda that I'm going to present about today is the courage to shape lives. In America and all over the world, there is an extreme amount of homelessness in families in particular, and children who are just on the street. And a lot of times it's hard to imagine how we could shape lives, and we need someone who has the courage to help shape those lives as well. This is where the Urukundu Foundation comes in. Now, we stayed at Urukundu for about 4 days and did teacher training while we were there. And Mama Arlene, who runs the Urukundu Foundation, has about 50 to 54 kids in the foundation at this point. They have a school, they have 3 square meals a day, they have music lessons every week, they have art lessons. These children who were abandoned for various circumstances, whether the family couldn't take care of them or they had some problems that weren't known how to deal with at the time, or if they had other circumstances that may have happened, they're provided for here. And they have the best life they could possibly have, as opposed to maybe being on the street and wondering where their next meal could be. I remember in particular, I was reading to one of the children while I was there on our last day. And I was reading him a book about space, and he was asking me all these questions about how this works and how that works. And I thought to myself, he could have had an entirely different life than he has right now. But someone had the courage to say, I will take you in and help him out, especially with the circumstances around Mama Arlene. So this is Mama Arlene. She is an 87-year-old woman from Pennsylvania that made her way out to Rwanda and started this foundation. The first time she came to Rwanda, she fell in love with it. And the next time she came back, there was an active volcano that was there that erupted. And so she was stuck there for quite a bit of time. When she came back, she was interviewed by the press because they had got wind that she was there. And during that interview, they asked her what she wanted to do next. And she told them, well, I want to start a foundation for abandoned children. And after that presentation, a few weeks afterwards, she got a check for $500 from someone saying, start this up. And she said, that's all I needed, picked up her life, moved right to Rwanda to start it. Especially with the circumstances around what could have happened to her when she came here. The video that this is from describes how when she came back, she was working for a minister at the time who was very greedy, was taking money from a lot of individuals, and was getting paid off in order to do certain works for the community. And she finally said, I've had enough, I'm not gonna work for you anymore, and left. When she came back to Rwanda, she had a contract for her life. So there was a hit ordered on her, on this, on this 78-year-old woman for her life in Rwanda, and she was protected. The city, the district of Bumhanga, which is a couple hours outside of Kigali, protected her and made sure she stayed safe this entire time and made sure she could get the work done that she was trying to do. So, what about me? At the beginning of this trip, I didn't know if I was going to make it. I didn't know how I would survive. And by the end of it, I adopted the smiles that everyone has throughout the country. I plan on going back to Rwanda in summer 17 and staying with the Urukundu Foundation. And I'm so glad that this trip taught me the courage to be able to take that step. I saw a quote the other day that said, if you don't travel abroad, it's like staying in your bedroom your entire life. Because you don't see any much of the rest of the world. And the final thing I'm going to leave you with is the greatest test of courage on earth is to bear defeat without losing heart. And this applies directly to Rwanda with everything it's been through and all that it's done to rebuild itself.